Welcome to Above the Mark, where we take you from the soil to the office and everywhere in between.
We're your hosts, Jack and Troy, bringing you real conversations on farm leadership, rural life, and the big issues shaping modern agriculture.
Whether you're knee-deep in the field or just ag curious, there's something here for you.
So let's dig in and aim a little higher.
Well, welcome back. We're back with another episode of Above the Mark here at Mercer Landmark. I'm Troy Grimm. This is the other host, Jackie. Today we're going to be diving into some stuff that we talked about in the last podcast, right? We have our first guest, Mark Roeth.
Excited about this?
Yeah, he's well known in his household. You're going to get to know a little bit more about him today. So today we're going to kind of talk about, we talked about the 4 pillars a little bit in the last time. I think we hinted at them, but we didn't want to give too much away, right?
Yes.
But we're going to talk about our 4 pillars and what those are and how we utilize them.
Is this our foundation?
What?
The 4 pillars, is this our foundation?
This is our foundation, right? Yeah, so this is what we talk about here a lot at Mercer and how we kind of want to build our business. In the last episode, we talked about customer experience and how important that is to us, and how we do everything with kind of the customer in mind, right? We talked about how we're a co-op and we're farmer-owned and how that really is important to us. So Mark's here to kind of elaborate on that. I guess without further ado, Mark, introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Appreciate being here. Good seeing you, Jackie. My name's Mark Roeth, and I'm actually the Chief People Officer here at Mercer Landmark. A somewhat recent job change. I was the Director of Organizational Development. We did some restructuring, and it became that a lot of it is around the pillars and kind of a new focus on how we want to go to business here at Mercer Landmark. So, been in the cooperative system for 3+ decades. From sales, mostly in feed sales on the regional co-op side, sales management, and a lot of the people development things I'm doing now.
Yeah, so Mark's got a ton of wisdom, I think, to give. I call Mark probably more times than you like, just with different things, whether it's a personal thing or a work thing or strategy on how we're doing that. Mark's got a lot of experience in that. I guess as we get into the 4 pillars, what's the overview of the pillars? I guess what are the pillars?
Mm-hmm.
How did they come about? That kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. I've been back with Mercer Landmark for about 2.5 years. The way I understand, probably 4 or 5 years ago, the board of directors and the senior leadership team got together to really try to define and decide what the values are of Mercer Landmark. And what came out of that, I understand, is kind of a culture of excellence. So whenever they came up with the culture of excellence and realizing how they want to go to market, and it's really kind of an internal slogans, but we use it externally a little bit as well. But really came up with the 4 pillars then. And they're innovate, grow, develop, and perform. So as you guys are both aware, we try to start most of our internal meetings with some discussion around the 4 pillars. Because it really is our culture of excellence and how we try to do what we do every day to the best we can.
Yeah, I think that that's what that you talked about, or you said that we talk about it every meeting, and that's probably an understatement, right?
Absolutely.
Anytime you walk around our offices, it's plastered all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
We might not talk about every pillar in a meeting, but we try to at least cover one and say, what's an example of this? What's something that we have done this week? I think it's kind of important too to talk about that we have our 4 pillars, and then we have words that we kind of associate with that, right? So with Innovate, we're talking about ideas, right? Grow, we're talking about change. Develop, we're talking about our people. We talked about the internship program in the last podcast and kind of what that looks like. And then perform, we're talking about data and how we drive that. The first one, Innovate, right? So we could get into that one. What does Innovate mean to you, and how do you feel that we utilize that, or what's some thoughts behind the Innovate?
Yeah, you mentioned the word ideas that we utilize, and we try to do a little bit of a rallying cry around each one of these, so the employees know, okay, when we're talking about innovation, we're talking about ideas. And one of the phrases we use quite a bit is that every idea matters.
Yep.
And that's easy to say and sometimes harder to do. We have 280 or so employees here at Mercer Landmark, and we really truly believe, and we're instilling the concept that the best ideas come from the employees that are closest to the customer and closest to the ground troops that are closest to what's getting done.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there's several levels at Mercer Landmark, but we try to listen to and get innovative ideas from the ground troops, really, mostly.
So you said, it goes from the ground up all the way to the top, right? To senior leadership. Do you feel like, you've been at Mercer for a while now. Do you feel like this is truly our culture and that people believe this and that we're not just preaching it, but we're living it?
Yeah. So I have a lot of time with I affectionately call them the ground troops, the folks getting the job done. And then also a lot of time at the senior level with leadership. And part of my job is to continuously remind leadership to listen to the employees' ideas. And even if we don't do what the employees think we should do, to get back with them and make sure they understand why. We really try to focus on the why behind the what. We may not do everything every employee thinks we ought to do, but it's explaining why we aren't is almost as important, because then they feel value in their job and in their position. So it's interesting because I can kind of see it at the leadership side. Don't forget, if we're not using ideas, we got to tell them why. And then also at the front lines to say, keep bringing us ideas, because that's where innovation happens.
Yeah, we discussed in the last episode, and I've told you this, I've worked multiple places in my short career, but I feel like I have a voice here more than any other place. We talk about people say, oh, I got a silly question or whatever it may be. That's really not the case here, right? We're open to everything. Like, so we might not go forward with everything, and it might not, when we think innovative, it doesn't mean it's got to be a brand new idea. We could just be tweaking one little thing to really make it a new innovative way of doing it, right? We've talked about, and in agriculture, it's common knowledge, right, that things are changing rapidly. So when you look at the Innovate pillar and innovation in a whole, how does that differ now versus 10 years ago?
Yeah, I've been around Mercer Landmark for like I said, over 3 decades, in different jobs within that and at the regional level in the co-op. And 10 years ago at Mercer, it was probably more divisional. We have 4 divisions: grain, agronomy, energy, and feed. And in the last 4 years with this concept, we really switched over to business units instead of divisions, because divisions seem divisive.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we did that, we also started looking at the performance from Mercer Landmark first, team number 1, and then the business units, and then the locations. In the past, the locations actually competed a little bit against each other, just because that's how they were judged. But now it really is team number 1, and Mercer Landmark's profitability first for the member owners, down to each business unit, and then to the locations.
So making that transition from each business unit, each division on their own versus now we're Mercer Landmark, does that benefit our growers?
I think it certainly does. Where those ideas come from is at the ground roots level, and we do a lot of sharing of employees across business units right now. So we may have somebody in an applicator or somebody in an agronomy during the spring that jumps in and helps deliver propane in the winter. Vice versa, delivering grain or doing that. So I think where that benefits the customer owner is that there's more ideas that can be brought to us from the front lines where the customers are working with us to get things done and to make changes.
Is there we talked about the business unit, how we made that change, which to some might seem like that's a small change. You didn't really want to make that much of a difference, but it does. You talked about truck drivers and being able to do that. Is there one thing that sticks out to you outside of those that you've seen as far as innovation goes?
Yeah, I think just since I've been here, and you guys know this product a lot better than I do, but just the whole Mercer Landmark Connect and the ability in the palm of your hand on your smartphone to be able to get a lot of information as a customer owner, grower out there in the field than they ever could before. So from paying the bills to locking in contracts on grain, to seeing where your account is, and just communication as a whole. I think that's pretty innovative. And a lot of companies have done that, but maybe not a lot of agriculture companies or co-ops have done that.
Yeah, so the Connect app that we use that internally. There's an internal side of it as well as a customer base side of it. We use it for, like I said, paying bills, ordering, whatever it may be. as well as just sending out communications. What time is this facility closing today? We're in a busy time. What time is are we going to stay open until 8 tonight, or are we closing at 4:30? Yeah, I think that's key, right? Because before there wasn't a good way to get that information out, and that's just helping everybody efficiency wise. Building the Connect app, obviously we had partnerships in that as far as building it and running it and doing all the background work on it. What role do partnerships play in this Innovate pillar?
Yeah, I think partnerships are, well, we kind of explained it already as it relates to how we partner with other business units and how valuable that is. But I think at the end of the day, being able to get information and data, which is one of our other pillars, perform, into the hands of our customer owners is a big deal. And whenever you think about partnerships, that's really what we are. And I know you guys both work with a lot of advisors on the grain side and the agronomy side. And at the end of the day, our advisors, the ones that are truly trusted advisors with the farmer customer owners, really think of that as a partnership. And we really hope the customer owners think that also. Unlike a lot of agronomic companies, we're a co-op. So not only do we need to perform for those customers, at the end of the day, they own us.
Yeah.
And hopefully as we become or stay profitable and have more profits every year, we pay that back in patronage.
So when you talk about farmer owners, we want to make sure that we are talking about these pillars, but not just on our end. How do we encourage growers as well as our internal staff to be more innovative and to take some risk and to experiment on things and try new things? And how do we, as whether it's our team of advisors or us as leads or anybody within the organization or just us on this podcast talking to the listeners, what are some things that we can do to help these people to want to be that way?
Yeah, I think it's as we go to the farm with the mindset of failing fast. I heard that one time, and it's a little bit confusing, because we don't want to fail. But if we're not moving fast and trying to be innovative, we will never fail.
Right.
So
you learn failing. Right?
That's right. John Maxwell always said, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
Yeah.
Because if you fail and don't learn, then that's really, you lose the pain that you took, and you lose it as gain, not getting the gain. So I think it's just, whether it's us or it's our customer owners, it's just being able to take those risks and lean into opportunities so that if you do fail, if you're in a sporting event or anything and you're timid and you're slowing down and you're on your heels, you get knocked down. It takes a while to get up.
Yeah.
If you're moving fast and failing forward, you can adjust.
Yep.
You can adjust on the fly and move. So there'll be some things in agriculture that maybe we step into that wasn't exactly the right thing. But being able to learn from that, I think the mindset of that is pretty important.
I tell my growers a lot, maybe not a lot, but a select few that I have a relationship with, I'm going to make you get comfortable being uncomfortable, because we're constantly pushing forward and we want you to come along for the ride. And there's times that they're pushing forward and we got to be comfortable being uncomfortable, not knowing what we're going forward with. But we do our best in the back end to make sure that we're still putting that experience first, right? Even though we want them to be innovative and take risk, but how do we do it and still have a good experience with it, right? And I think that is a good way into our second one, which is grow, right? So you talked about, you're not going to grow if you're not doing these things. So what does it mean to grow? What does grow mean to you? Is it more acres? Is it bigger equipment? Is it more efficiencies? Is it a better quality of life? Is it
more facilities?
More facilities? Yeah. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's probably all that, and specifically some of that, depending on the year or the time. The word we use for grow is change. And so I think it's more on being able and willing to be innovative and make that change, because if you're not growing, you're dying is another term that we use quite a bit. So change can seem stressful. There are different generations involved. Some people like change better than others. Some people deal with change faster than others. But during one of the mergers on the cooperative side, the regional side years ago, I remember when we were going through some major change, and the guy at the microphone said, "You think change is stressful? Try not changing and see what the industry does to you." Mm-hmm. So that's across. That's not just a co-op. It's the farm. Obviously, we are doing things today different than we did 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago at the co-op. And at the same rate, the farms are also. It's interesting to think about. I remember the first semi-load of feed I ever sold, and thought that was pretty big time. A whole semi-load, a 24-ton of feed to a farm. Now our MPS mill has a capacity and has been producing 125 semi-loads a day that they make out of there. So the amount of change has happened in that regard in the last 35 plus years is pretty amazing. But it's because the change is happening faster on the farm.
Yeah. So with your history that you've said, you've seen all these changes. What's been the biggest growth challenge that you've had or seen in agriculture? Maybe not just a co-op, but in agriculture or whatever.
Yeah, I think just getting everybody on the same page that growth and change is needed. Again, back to that quote on the industrial barrier. If you don't change, and that industry could be actually farming or the cooperative or in agriculture or what have you. But I think the biggest thing is just helping people through that change.
Yeah.
And it could be employees, could be the advisors or the salespeople that we represent. You call me quite a bit just with stuff. Your growers call you quite a bit with stuff. And at the end of the day, it's helping them understand and get a handle on that change, because it's pretty stressful.
So, okay. So with that, I mean, you've been doing this for a really long time, and you understand people's personalities and who they are. And I'm one of those weirdos. I actually love change. I find it exciting. But I also know that that's not normal. A lot of people, why is it that so many people view change as a negative?
I think there's several fears that come with change, and one is the fear of failure. One's the fear of judgment. I mean, that's one thing in our industry. It's not like people don't see what you're doing if you're running a grocery store somewhere.
Yeah.
There's a lot, I think, of change comes at us and we don't want to fail. Because it's our livelihood for our family and all that. And I think a lot of folks also are just fear of judgment, that they didn't make the right decisions at the right time to make their farm or their organization fruitful in that regard. So everybody does go through change different, and there's a change cycle that we all deal with. It's interesting, Jackie, some people can go through it in 10 to 12 hours when something rocks them, and some people it could take 10 to 12 weeks or months.
Yeah.
And it's all the same process, right? Whenever that change hits you and how you deal with it. But our job is to be cognizant that people go through change at different levels and try to see where they're at, when they're at it, and try to help them through it. So
do you feel like Mercer Landmark as a co-op, do you feel like the change and the growth that we have made, just think about the last 4 years, has that been like at a snail's pace, or is this like leaps and bounds?
Well, you would say maybe a snail's pace where somebody else may say it's just, crazy. So, as we look at the 4 and then 5 business units that we have here, the change has happened at different paces depending on what the industry is handing us. It's everything we know that change brings for us. The next 10 years is going to be way faster than the last 10. And the last 10 was way faster than the last 60 maybe. So that's just going to keep increasing. And again, it's all about people at the end of the day, and we got to make sure we're helping each one of them through it the best we can.
Yeah.
All about our people, right? Which takes us right into our next pillar is develop, right? What does that mean to you? What does that mean for the co-op?
Yeah, so develop, the key word there is people. And we've tagged a phrase recently to that, unlocking people potential, which you guys both know me fairly well. And obviously with my title being the chief people officer now, it's where I live and what I love and what I love doing. So, we can take people the way we find them, and we could make them worse. But if we treat them in how we see they could be, then their future can be amazing. And I think it's all perspective on how we take people and find them that way. So I forget your question already, but because I started rolling.
But
Yeah.
It is what it is, right? Our people. But also, if you think about that from a grower standpoint, right? Continuing to develop themselves, their employees, their business, right? I mean, that makes them successful, right?
Mhm.
Unlocking the unlimited potential.
Yeah. One thing working a lot with in the last 2 years is the whole concept at Mercer Landmark of organizational health. And an organization that has health has less drama, less turnover, less mistakes, less failures. And if we don't have organizational health in our organization or on the farm, we're only tapping into a very small amount of the potential we have for that organization. If people work together for the betterment of each other, it can just explode. At the same rate, if we don't have a healthy organization, you can have all the strategy, all the finance, all the innovation, technology, and everything else in the world. But if you don't have the people behind it, it can tear the thing down pretty quick.
Well, I think that when you talk about organizational health, that's a direct correlation to what the customer's experience is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jackie and I had lunch with a customer a week or two ago, and he's mentioned this multiple times that the Mercer today is not the Mercer of 5 years ago, because they've been able to see from the outside, even though we sometimes don't think that people can see what's going on the inside, that we have changed as far as an organizational health. But when we're developing people, or you've been developing yourself, if we have a customer or grower out there listening right now that's like, man, I really want to develop my people. What's one thing that's helped you personally or in your leadership capacity develop, or that you've used to help develop someone else? Or what's the thing that sticks out to you the most?
Well, there's a few programs we have here. You guys talked about the internship program, I believe, earlier, maybe the last episode, and we just launched that here within the last couple of days. And I told them already in the second day on the sessions that the quote I heard one time is that people that don't read aren't any better off than people that can't read. And that kind of hits to the heart a little bit. And I've been on campuses and talked to different students. And one fella actually said, so what if you listen to it on Audible? I said, yeah. And the point is, take in books somehow. If you can hear it, in a podcast or in an Audible, the benefit of the people that read and gain ideas from that, you're inside of thousands of people's minds that you would not get into if you didn't read. They're writing their concepts down into a book, and you're absorbing that, and you're kind of experiencing through them. And really, anybody has that potential to be able to read and absorb other people's thought processes. So as I think about developing folks, we have an emerging leaders program called Ambition in Action that both of you guys have been through.
Yes.
And surprisingly to the folks that go through that, we end up we read 3 books, and then I give them a book at the end also. And sometimes that's some of the people get into the habit of not reading much anymore. And the books that we offer to them are fairly either from well-known authors, but not real difficult and deep-centered books. But the concept is that's where they gain a lot of their insight, where we gain a lot of our insight and knowledge is just to absorb information. And the best way to do that is reading or listening to those.
To a podcast.
Yeah, to a podcast. Yeah, and believe me, I'm getting excited just about the mowing season coming up at home, because that's when it only takes me an hour and a half or so to mow. But I've got podcasts, so my podcasts are in my ears.
So when we talk about agriculture as a whole, whether it be here, farmers, industry, are we doing enough, do you think, to continue to develop the young people that are coming into it?
Yeah, I don't know if we're ever doing enough. I do know that it's out there and it's potential. It can happen. And I think that's one thing where the concept of leaders go first sometimes, in the concept of we need to do that here at Mercer Landmark with our employees so the customer owners can see that, ask us our opinion, and then we can then say, hey, what about this? Why don't you try this? Now, the next step could be where we offer a lot of those same programs we're doing to help develop our employees for the farm sector.
Yep.
And so that's just something that can be developed with the word to be able to get on the farm and help, because obviously education doesn't stop when you leave high school or college.
Yeah.
And we got to make sure we help them with that.
Yep. And then once we get past we're continuing to develop and we want to put it into action then. So that brings us into our last pillar, right? Perform. A question I had down was, how do we define high performance, whether it's here or in an operation? That's a hard question, right? Because everybody rates that differently. So I guess what would your thoughts on that be?
Yeah, I think the thoughts on that, there's so much data we have now to be able to decipher and go through. So we can get caught in the weeds sometime on thinking, okay, I'm not as good as this, as that, or the other. I think the key is just that we're better than we were yesterday. We're better than we were last year on some data points that it's important to us.
Yep.
So that can be us individually, that can be the farm. But at the end of the day, it's just having our eyes on the business is another word that or a phrase that we like to use, be it here or at the farm, and to be able to track that the best we can.
Yep. So when we perform, right, it obviously always goes correctly, and it's all good, right? Not so when there is a failure and there is something that we feel like we developed really well, and we're gonna take it, and we're gonna be innovative, and we're gonna do these things, and we fail, right? How's a good way for someone to reset from that and kind of reevaluate the situation and move forward, but also grow from that?
Yeah. So there's a lot that's happening. But I think the key on all that is just believing in what your core values are and what you really believe in. And that there's been a lot of seasons come and go, and a lot of folks come through this industry. And it's going to be all right. It's just different than we think it is. So really to reset back to the core values and realize what you really, really believe in. And those could be different for different people. But focusing back and having core values to fall back on when things aren't going well is how you reset.
Yeah. And I think a key too is to, make it measurable, right? So question of, what is success? How do we measure success? Make sure you have that in place before we're trying something new. Like before we get moving on something, what does success look like to you? So we have something to measure off of, right? That's a cool way to look at it, I think.
Yeah, and on a personal note, I heard this one time and I love it. Success is when those who know you the best love you and respect you the best also. Success maybe isn't so much if the ones that know you the best don't respect you. That's a problem. That's probably not very successful. So
yeah.
I think one of the great takeaways from this is the fact that, when you're using all of our pillars and you're thinking about the individual person, so whether you're thinking about an employee of the co-op or an employee of your business on the farm, right? So everybody's different and thinking, changing and growing. Maybe you hired this person to do this, and then you found out, oh no, they're just not good at this, or this is just not their skill set. But then you discover through talking to them and learning some of the different things, their characteristic traits about them. Oh my gosh, they're phenomenal at this, right? So being able to take all of our different pillars. And I think this is some way, ways that when our growers are even looking at, hey, I've got all these employees, how, like what you asked earlier, how can we help them? How do we train them and grow our operations? That's a great thing right there. Just because it's not a fit for that person in that specific role doesn't mean they're not a fit for your operation.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mark, for coming on.
Appreciate it.
We greatly appreciate it.
We made it through another episode, Jackie, and
We're doing this.
We're doing it.
Yeah, diving in.
Doing it. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Again, you can follow us on Spotify, iTunes, videos on YouTube. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we'll catch you next time. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Above the Mark.
Be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify along with YouTube, and we'll see you next time.